Once upon a time, along the rocky shores of Niger, there lived a beautiful young mermaid named Zanzi. She had ebony skin that glistened like obsidian under the sea, and a magnificent iridescent tail that sparkled in shades of emerald, sapphire, and violet. Zanzi would often swim near the surface, her melodic voice ringing out as she sang songs to the moon and stars. In a bustling seaside village nearby lived a handsome fisherman named Ikenna. He was tall and muscular, with eyes as deep brown as the fertile earth. As long as he could remember, Ikenna had felt drawn to the sea. Its beauty, mystery, and danger exhilarated him like nothing else. Each morning, as the golden sun peaked above the horizon, Ikenna would take his small fishing boat out onto the shimmering water. He quickly learned where the fish were plentiful, how to navigate the sometimes treacherous waters, and how to read the moods of the sea. He took pride in providing for his village this way. But Ikenna's favorite part of fishing was simply being near the stunning ocean, with its salty breeze and the sound of crashing waves. In those moments, he felt utterly content and free. One morning, as Ikenna floated under the radiant dawn sky, waiting for fish to take his bait, he heard a melody on the wind, the most beautiful singing he had ever heard. Like magic itself, was carried across the water. Ikenna scanned the sea for the source of this heavenly sound. Suddenly, amongst gently rolling waves, he spotted a dark head peeking out. As he squinted, the head disappeared under the water, and for a split second, he caught a flash of a glittering tail unlike anything he had seen. In that moment, Ikenna's heart skipped a beat. "A mermaid," he whispered to himself in awe. He had grown up hearing fanciful stories of mermaids and water spirits, but never imagined he would encounter one. Day after day, Ikenna returned to the same spot, hoping for another glimpse of the mystical creature. Her song echoed in his mind, beckoning him. One fateful morning, as Ikenna's boat drifted, he noticed strange ripples in the distance. As he rowed closer, the beautiful mermaid emerged from the depths, locking eyes with Ikenna. She regarded him curiously before diving back down. Ikenna's brief glimpse took his breath away. Her delicate features were striking, and her gleaming tail mesmerizing. She was without doubt the most gorgeous creature he had ever seen. From that day on, the mermaid began appearing more regularly as Ikenna fished, each time staying above water a little longer. Soon they began interacting, shouting about their worlds on the land and under the sea. Ikenna started bringing gifts like pearls and flowers to delight her. Before long, the mermaid Zanzi and the fisherman Ikenna had fallen deeply in love. When Ikenna returned to shore, they would meet offshore, spending blissful hours together swimming, telling stories, and laughing together. Their unlikely love flourished, despite lacking a common world to inhabit. After months of yearning for each other, between their encounters, Ikenna invited Zanzi to meet him at a hidden cove only he knew, sheltered among soaring cliffs. When Zanzi arrived that moonlight night, Ikenna revealed his surprise. He had gathered enough pearls and shells to create a stunning necklace just for her. As he gently fastened it around her neck, Zanzi was overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. In that moment, she made a decision that would change the course of both their lives forever. She asked Ikenna to visit her under the sea, using a special potion she created to give him gills and a strong fish tail for one night. Ikenna was awestruck by the vibrant beauty of Zanzi's underwater kingdom. They swam together past colorful coral reefs and seaside caves. Glowing fish lighting their way through the sapphire depths. Meeting Zanzi's merfolk family, Ikenna was welcomed with open arms. By the time the potion wore off and Ikenna returned to land just before sunrise, their hearts belonged to each other completely. From then on, they took turns visiting each other's worlds, perfectly content in their improbable love. But their bliss could not last forever, for lurking in the shadows was a jealous villain who would stop at nothing to destroy their happiness. Far along the coast lived Wazi, a broad-shouldered fisherman, renowned for his skill but feared for his wicked temper. Despite having his pick of the local maidens, Wazi's heart remained cold and empty until the day he first heard Zanzi's melodic voice floating over the waves. Her beauty dazzled him, and her uniqueness fed his dangerous obsession. He began patrolling the shores, determined to find this mysterious sea creature. Soon, Wazi spotted her in a secluded cove, meeting with a local fisherman. Rage boiled up inside him to see Zanzi giving her affections to another. He swore to himself that he would claim this rare prize at any cost. Wazi started tracking the couple's meetings, always watching from afar through spyglass on cliff tops. His envy only grew more violent with time. He hatched his ruthless plot to take the mermaid for himself. The next full moon, lovers Zanzi and Ikenna met under the stars at their very special cove. Unknowingly to them, Wazi lay waiting nearby. As they kissed and embraced, too caught up in each other to notice the danger, Wazi made his move. He surged out of the darkness and overpowered Ikenna, knocking him out cold. Grabbing a fishing net, Wazi swiftly wrapped up the panicking Zanzi before she could dive away. Her screams echoed through the night air as he dragged her back across the rocks. When Ikenna finally regained consciousness, Zanzi was gone. Frantically, he searched up and down the coast, but found no trace of his kidnapped love. His guts told him one person was behind this: Wazi. Enraged, Ikenna confronted the brute the next morning, demanding to know what he had done with Zanzi. But Wazi only laughed in his face, mocking his desperation. Though he had no proof, Ikenna knew he must save his darling Zanzi before it was too late. In an isolated sea cave far down the coast, Zanzi sat trapped in a tide pool that Wazi had barricaded from the ocean. Her tail hung limply as it dried out, her voice growing hoarse from weeping. She had never felt more powerless. Wazi visited her imprisonment each day, trying to win her affection with offers of jewels and fanciful tales of the life he would provide her. But the mermaid remained defiant, rebuking his advances. She only longed for her beloved Ikenna. Her stubbornness drove Wazi into a rage. If he could not possess her, he vowed the sea wish would belong to no other man. Once Zanzi's spirit had finally broken, and only then would he return to end her suffering at last. Little did he know, Zanzi's salvation was near. After days of scouring the shore, Ikenna noticed a faint trail leading towards a cave concealed by towering cliffs. As he crept inside, guided by flickering torchlights, a familiar melody reached his ears, his lost love song.
When Zanzi saw Ikenna enter,
She cried out in relief and delight. Despite her weakened state, hope had returned. Ikenna waded into the pool to cradle her lovingly in his arms. "I will save you," he whispered. After prying away rocks blocking the pool's outlet, seawater began flowing in. Zanzi's tail splashed joyfully at the feel of the ocean's rejuvenating touch. But their reunion was cut violently short. Enraged bellows echoed off the cave walls as Wazi returned to find Ikenna freeing his captive. A spear flew through the air, plunging into Ikenna's back just as he turned. With his last breath, Ikenna pushed Zanzi's body out into the open water. As her strength returned, she could only watch in horror as the life drained out of her darling Ikenna's eyes. His body floated there in the crimson pool, a tragic sacrifice so she could be free. Filled with rage and grief, Zanzi swam from the cove that had been her prison. But she soon realized that her time stranded in the tidal pool had taken its toll. Her tail could barely propel her forward, and her gills struggled for breath. Weakened and heartbroken, the mermaid had little hope of survival. As she began to sink beneath the waves, accepting her fate to be drowned in the depths, Zanzi was suddenly lifted up. A pair of gentle hands pulled her into a fishing boat above.
When Zanzi's eyes flickered open,
She saw not Ikenna as she had hoped, but his brother Kofi. Kofi had watched his brother fall deeply in love with the mermaid, though he knew their romance was dangerous. Now, Kofi was determined to save the mermaid who had brought such joy to Ikenna's life. As the boat glided over the waves back towards the village, Zanzi slipped in and out of consciousness. Though her tail had withered and her breathing was strained without the sea's relief, Kofi kept her alive with wet rags and whispered encouragement. When they reached the shore, Kofi brought Zanzi to a sheltered tidal pool in the mangroves where fresh seawater flowed in. Day after day, he tended to the weary mermaid, catching fish to sustain her. He feared she might succumb to grief and heartbreak. Gradually, as Zanzi's strength returned, her spirit began to heal as well. She regaled Kofi with fond memories of his brother that made them both smile through the pain. Though their time was short, Ikenna's love had been a gift she would forever cherish.
at last, Zanzi was ready to return to her undersea home.
As Kofi carried her into the open ocean, she squeezed his hand warmly. "Thank you for your kindness," she said. "Stay close to the shore when you fish, and listen for my song on the wind. I will visit to share Ikenna's tales with you." Kofi watched as she swam further out, her shimmering tail flashing through the turquoise water. Though tinged with sadness, his heart swelled at the sight. Zanzi paused to look back one last time, then dove gracefully beneath the gleaming surface. As she descended into the balmy depths, schools of fish danced around her in welcome. The memory of her love's face gave her strength to go on. Though the mermaid's heart was scared by loss, Kofi knew her unconquerable spirit would endure. As long as she sang, his brother lived on. Their extraordinary love had been cut short by evil, but its light would never fade.